Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm so happy that you're here. This is Sarah Haas with the Boss Body Podcast, and I have really a treat for you today. My special guest is Lynda Monk, and she is the director for the International Association for Journal Writing. She is also a writing for wellness coach and a best-selling author. So she has so much to share with us today about journaling and how that can be a life-changing self-care practice that has just unlimited benefits. And we were talking a little bit before the show because she asked me if I was a journaler. And I was telling her that, yes, I have journaled off and on for my whole life, ever since probably middle school age, which is hilarious because I still have those journals and I can see what I was working through at that time. And I've always found journaling to be just so beneficial and such a good practice to get into. And I, like many of you, am busy and juggling a lot, and it's hard to make that time. But Lynda's going to talk to us about that today and kind of talk about why we might want to start carving out that time and getting back into it or getting started if you're not a journaler. So, Lynda, I'm so happy to have you here. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Sarah. And I just want to say, wherever someone who is listening, wherever you're at with journaling, maybe you're listening because you're just curious, how can it be helpful? Maybe you're an avid journal writer and you'd like to take your journaling deeper. When it comes to journaling, we always start where we're at. And there's no need to have any journaling shame or embarrassment or not journaling enough or any of that. It is a very kind practice. And it really calls us into that self-compassionate place with ourselves. So wherever you're at with it, I invite you, as Sarah and I are chatting together, to just think about how might it be helpful to you? What might you like to get out of journaling? As Sarah said, we're all busy. We're often tending to the needs of others, especially as women in our families and in our careers. There's a lot of places our attention is focused on the care and serving of others, other projects, other people, which is a wonderful part of our rich lives. And in my experience, what that can translate into sometimes is that it can be hard to take the time for the things that are just for ourselves. That those moments that help us fill our own cups, that help us nourish ourselves, replenish, know ourselves, grow ourselves, all of those pieces can sometimes sit out in the edges or as lower priority things than all the other things. And so what I love about journaling is that moment we pick up the pen, the moment we go to the page, we're taking that purposeful pause. We're saying this time for myself matters. This time to self-reflect matters. This time to engage in cultivating self-awareness is a worthy pursuit. And so much happens the moment we do that. We create that habit pathway, that those purposeful pauses are relevant and meaningful, and we give ourselves permission to do them as often as we can.
Yeah, and I like what you said about, it's getting into that habit. And I like the word practice because self-care is a practice, yoga is a practice, meditation is a practice. It's something that is important, and we know that we need to be doing these things for our own self-care, but it's so hard to make ourselves a priority. Like you said, we tend to push it back and I'll get to it later. And so many of the women in my community are givers, are nurturers, are caregivers. We're moms, we work hard, and we take care of everyone in our lives. And in doing so, we often neglect ourselves and what we really need. And I think it's just great to have somebody like you to give us a reminder, to give us a nudge that, to bring it to the forefront of our minds again, because we get caught up in work, we get caught up in taking care of our families, whatever our busy lives are throwing at us. And just the act of listening to this podcast and hearing my guests creates that awareness and permission, really, and reinforcement that you deserve this and you need this in order to realize your best self and to feel good about yourself and to create the joy in your life that you're so seeking. And I want to hear about your story. How did you start getting into journaling and how did you become eventually a journaling coach? I'm sure that journaling must have a very important part in your life.
Mm. Sarah, you talked about being in middle school when you started journaling. And before the podcast, I just grabbed my first journal for a little show and tell. And it's like the size of you can see it in relation to my hand. It's like a large postage stamp, has a pencil down the side. And I was about 8 or 9 when I started writing my thoughts and days down in paper. I still remember and many listeners might as well, those little journals with a lock and key. It was all very top secret. This is my journal now. It's much, I always have stickers on it, but it still has the pen down the spine, still has blank pages.
And for those who are listening only on audio who can't see it, her first one has Snoopy on the front and it's so cute. And I so remember those journals when you're more in those teen years that have that little lock and key. You just reminded me of that. And that was just so special and so exciting when you got that because it was like, this is something just for me. This is really exciting and special and something I can hide and have for myself that is just really neat and fun.
Yeah, yeah. And they're special documents. They're worthy of protecting our privacy matters. Some people are nervous to write their thoughts and feelings in a journal for fear that someone might read them, and that's a real fear. People have had that happen. So they're something that are very precious. I think of my journal as a very sacred container for my life and for my well-being, and I treat it with respect. The people who I love treat it with respect. I know I can leave it on our kitchen table. I have 2 teen sons and my husband Peter, and they know that that's a very private place. If I choose to read something to them or anyone, that's my choice, but it's a place that is private and people know not to read it. And so it's important to create that safety around our journals in whichever way you might, because it helps free us up to go to the page in an honest and authentic and uncensored way. And of course, that's the type of writing we want to do to really gain the benefits of journaling. You asked about my story, Sarah, and just briefly, I had obviously been journaling as a young person, and I'm a registered social worker. And the first 10 years of my social work career, I worked in a lot of high trauma, high stress work in child welfare. I was a crisis response counselor. I worked as a medical social worker in the ICU and emergency departments of a hospital. And the work was all very fast paced, very caregiving focused. I'm a helping professional. And it was something where I got away from my journaling a bit. In the fast paced of doing that work, I was in my first marriage. I was going to university alongside working in different pockets. So there was a lot going on. But what I noticed is that when I would have a very intense day in the work, it's just very emotionally, you're exposed to so much trauma material vicariously through the stories and experiences of people you're supporting in that type of work. I noticed that I would sometimes just have that instinct to go to the page, just to get it out, to have that sort of unburdening, to get what was moving on the inside out so that it could be released and processed. And I found that I would just feel lighter. I felt more expansive. I felt more able to go back into the work the next day, which was sure to have more, intense elements to it due to the nature of the work. That was the nature of the work. And so when I did my master's of social work degree, I devoted it to the area of burnout prevention. I was, as I said, early in my career, I had witnessed other colleagues go off on stress leave, experience professional burnout. And it really stayed with me. I was so struck by how all of these amazing caregivers who've invested so much of themselves to become the professionals they are through their education and training, the devotion that I witnessed them give day in and day out in service to the work they were doing, the people they were helping. And it really perplexed me. What about the caregivers? How do we care for caregivers? How do we support the people doing this work? And what's needed to prevent burnout? And so that was my primary question doing my research in my master's was how do you get out of bed every day, serving the needs of others and stay well and happy and healthy as the helper? And in that research, what I kept coming across was this reference to the importance of having a reflective practice. There are many things we can do for burnout prevention. There are many things workplaces can do for burnout prevention. But this was one of the things that kept being noted was the importance of having a reflective practice. And journaling kept being mentioned. And I had this light bulb moment, like, that's kind of my secret sauce. I know I feel better when I do it, but here it is in the research talking about how it can help mitigate burnout. And so that caused me to then, start really looking into it a lot more. What does the research say about writing to heal? What does it say about the benefits of journaling? What's this link between burnout prevention and going to the page? And that caused me then to begin teaching workshops on journaling for self-care, which I still do to this day. And I'm 54 now, and I did my master's in my late 20s. So I've been passionate about this topic for a long time. And the reason I'm passionate about it is one, it works. And two, it's accessible. We don't need any fancy tools. It doesn't cost a lot of money. We don't need to go anyplace special to do it. We need a piece of paper and a pen, a notebook and a pen, a computer, and you could do it online if you wish. So it's portable. Even a short amount of journaling can have tremendous benefit. I regularly teach workshops. I did one yesterday where I will take people to the page for a 2-minute timed writing, then a 5-minute timed writing. And people are amazed at how much can happen in 5 minutes of journaling, how many emotions they can express, how much relief they feel. They feel relaxed. They feel more in tune with themselves. They feel like they've got things that they've had bottled up out, and that free just has that more expansive, freeing space within. So there's so many benefits, and there's a lot of research in the field of journaling that shows many health benefits emotionally, physically, psychologically, spiritually, things like improved immune function, being able to get better rest, reducing stress, feeling more meaning in life, more life purpose, being able to increase resiliency. The list goes on in terms of the proven benefits of journaling. So one of the things I really care about is, if we have tight muscles, for example, we know, I'll go to a massage therapist and that will help. What often people don't know is that, I'm feeling a bit stressed and overwhelmed. It may not come to their mind, I could journal for 5 minutes or I could journal for 10 minutes, and that can really help me. Because it's not as common for journal writers, it's common knowledge. But for people who haven't necessarily engaged with the practice, it wouldn't be top of mind to think of journaling as a solution, if you wish, or as an ally, as something that can be immensely helpful in our lives. So I love sharing the message that it is a powerful tool, and it's an accessible tool, and most people can do it, even people with physical limitations. I meet people, for example, who have severe arthritis in their hands, and it's painful for them to write. And we move towards more of an audio or a dictation in their phone type of journaling. I've journaled with young children who don't even have a lot of written skills yet, and we can use a lot of like drawings and making collage, and you can you can make a journaling practice in so many creative ways that can overcome any, possible limitations or barriers one might face in doing it. So it's important to um, uh, for people to get a sense of why would they bother. We're busy. Why would we try to fit in journaling alongside yoga and meditation and all the other practices that we might have in our lives? And I think it's because it's easy, it's effective, it's fun, it's creative, and it's something that can live alongside those other practices as well. I often combine my meditation and my journaling practice. So I have a morning practice where I get up, have a cup of coffee, and so rub my dog's belly and sit with her beside me before the rest of the family has got up. And I take a few minutes to engage in just quiet meditation or guided meditation if I have listening to an audio. And then I go to the page and start my day with that intention setting, with gratitude practice, with just stream of consciousness writing, and it takes all kinds of different directions. But it's such a grounding and nourishing, positive way to start the day. I always feel like I'm ready for what will come, both what I have planned and the unplanned parts of daily life, because I've had that tether, I've had that anchor to my journaling practice, which is an anchor into myself. And those moments where we can come home to ourselves, come home to who we are, to how we feel, to what we desire, actually is fuel for all the other loving and caring that we do in our lives. It's not separate from. Myself as a resourced person, as someone who's taking care of myself, I do all those other roles better from that resource place. Being a parent to my boys, as a partner to my husband. I have had two parents with Alzheimer's and know what it is to be, caring for aging parents. My dad's no longer here in the world, and my mom is on a palliative care path now. And so we're holding, and that's just our family. If you're raising kids and caring for parents, then there's all that happens in our professional lives. The amount of holding and caring and tending and responding that we do in these rich lives that we're living. It's that, what kind of practices, and by practice, I mean those things we do over and over again to come home to ourselves. What kind of practices become those containers, those moments where we just come into ourselves and get present, listen deeply within, replenish from that well that we actually have accessible to us. And those things are so essential. Without them, burnout is a much higher risk. Without them, self-neglect, self-abandonment, overwhelm, burnout, stress, they're much higher risks in our life. Just statistically speaking, if we do not have ways that work for us. And it's not a one size fits all. Journaling might be the practice for someone, and yoga might be a practice, prayer, meditation, time in nature. There's all kinds of ways to do that work for ourselves. But it's important that we have them and we do them regularly.
Yeah. And I really keyed into what you were saying about bottling our emotions, because that's something that almost all of us are guilty of doing. And we're we're busy and we tend to just neglect ourselves, and our lives are so stressful. And anytime you don't work through emotions, that's going to translate into some kind of illness, some kind of addiction or patterns, negative patterns, whatever that may be. It's going to surface in some way. And I kind of call writing a brain dump in a way. It's getting all of that is swirling around, not just in your head, but in your heart, letting it flow through you, and just taking that time to sit with it and to realize, a lot of us don't even realize how much were shouldering at one time. You know, you talked about healthcare workers and social workers, and if you're caring for a loved one, I cared for my dad for 2 years while he was dying of lung cancer, and then you're caring for children, and there's you're if you're an empath like I am, and many of us, you feel their pain and their sadness and whatever they're experiencing, you're experiencing to an extent. And it is unhealthy to keep all that inside and not express it and let it flow in some ways. And like you said, there are many ways to do it. Meditations, even going to like a professional, you know, a mental health professional. But journaling is something that you can do for yourself, and anyone can do it, and it's free, and it doesn't take a lot of time. So it's extremely accessible. And I want to key in on another benefit because so many of us are going through a transitional period of life. If you're in midlife, it is inevitable. You're dealing with your own aging and thinking about your own mortality and your hormones changing. You're dealing with maybe kids growing up and leaving the home and caring for parents and thinking about, you know, how they're aging is gonna, you know, it's scary and it's sad to see people if they're suffering. And I like that one of the benefits is that it just helps you navigate change and transition, because we all need a little help at this point in our lives.
Yeah, I just did a whole interview series called Go to the Page Speaker Series, and the topic was on how to use journaling to thrive during change and transition. And one of the things that's, I think, very valuable when journaling is if you're a regular journal writer, you get into your own habits and routines, just like anything we do regularly, and can have these sort of same ways of going to the page. And if you're a new journal writer, the blank page might feel like a really daunting place. Well, what do I write about to get these wonderful benefits that they're hearing about that are possible? And it's important to write about thoughts and feelings. So some people are familiar with more of a diary keeping style of journaling, where today I did this and I did that, and a record of our days. The type of journaling that I teach is a transformational journaling, or more of a therapeutic journaling, which involves really what is needed on the page to activate these healing qualities of writing. And that involves writing about thoughts and feelings. That involves, it's called expressive writing. And it's not just about the details or the events, it's that place to process emotions. Of course, the events can all be captured there too. But two prompts I really like that are easy openings into this type of journaling is right now I notice, or right now I feel, because it activates that observing part of you. It activates that mindfulness presence. What's here right now? What am I noticing right now? How am I feeling right now? And that as we write, we do that with a lot of self-compassion. We suspend judgment, and we just really know that as we're getting what's on the inside out, we're doing something that in a way can be a form of self-therapy. Journaling in and of itself isn't therapy, but it can be therapeutic when we are expressing ourselves in these honest and authentic ways. So the other is sometimes it's easy for a journal to become a bit of a dumping ground, where all that gets on the page is all of the stressors and the worries and the negative maybe things that are happening. And that can be very cathartic to get all of that out, but it shouldn't be where we pitch our tent. It shouldn't be the only thing that we do in our journals if we really want them to be these tools for feeling uplifted and hopeful and optimistic. We want to also capture writing about what we're grateful for. If we want to feel more joy, write about what brings you joy, write about joyful memories. It can be a very powerful tool to not just vent about our feelings or write about our days, but also transform our feelings, transform our thoughts, transform our actions. And that's why I think it's a very powerful personal growth tool, because as we raise awareness, which we do through the regular practice of journaling, we get to see our patterns, we get to know ourselves more. We're surprised. We don't just write about what we know. We actually just start writing and let the writing inform us. We learn things about ourselves. We discover new ideas. We get creative impulses. So many things happen in our journals with that regular self expression through writing. And as our awareness builds, we want to then take action based on the awareness that's building through our journaling. What action might we like to take in our lives? And that's where it's a very strong, almost self-coaching practice, or it's very, I think of how many things in my life I've made decisions about because it showed up in the pages of my journal. At the time, a medical social worker in the hospital, I had taken a trip down to the coast, and I was living in the central northern part of BC at the time. And I kept writing about how I would love to live on an island. I would love to be near the water. I would, all these things kept coming in the pages of my journal. And over time, I decided that I would do that. It's like I saw it so many times in the pages of my journal. It felt like a true desire. And then it's like, well, what can I do to take action on this? It's obviously something I want. And I ended up leaving that job and I moved to the island where I live now. And that's, over almost 24 years ago. I started my business. That was something that came in my journal. I wanted to do training and coaching. I wanted to leave my frontline social work role and start my own training and coaching practice where I could teach people what I had learned about burnout prevention through my studies. I wanted to create and offer workshops. I kept seeing that in my journal. And it's like, it gives you the courage then to take action, because what's in our journals is our true hearts. It's our true desires. It's our inner wisdom. It's our intuitive knowing. It's our own wise self coming on the page. I'll sometimes use that as a prompt, inner wise self, what do you have for me in there? Or inner wise guide, what do you have to say about this? And that's another powerful way to use our journaling practice, is to ask questions. I remember years ago hearing this quote that if Einstein had an hour to solve a difficult problem or challenge, he would spend the first 55 minutes coming up with a good question. And that good questions lead to new insights, new developments. And how you can use this in your journal, you can, for example, in your journal, make a list of what questions do you have in your life right now? What are you wondering about? What are you not sure about? What would you like to do next? What's working? What isn't working? You can make a list of your own questions that you're curious about, and then those questions can become journaling prompts. So there's many creative ways that you can use your practice.
I could not love what you said more about tapping into your own inner knowing, your own intuition, because we all have that inside of us. But if we don't take the time to become grounded, to become centered, and to tap into that, it can be easy not to even, it's in the background of our minds. And that is so amazing. What you said about just, you were seeing a pattern. This thought, this desire kept coming up over and over and over again. And just realizing that served as a catalyst for you changing your life. You moved to where you'd always dreamed of living. You changed your career and now you're thriving in that career. And I love that that was able to help you get unstuck. And we're all looking for ways to get unstuck from if wherever, is holding us in place so that we can move forward and so that, we can just live that awesome life. We can live our dream life. And this is just such a simple thing. And thank you so much for giving us those prompts because a lot of times we don't really know what to write down,
Mhm.
and it's so helpful just having those two questions as a starting point. I think that was really important. And the other thing that you mentioned that I also want to highlight is that, yes, you want to dive into those traumas. You want to express anger. You want to express grief, whatever those things are that you need to process. But you don't just want to live there. You also want to talk about what brings you joy, what you're grateful for, all the amazing things you have in your life. Because once you process the uncomfortable emotions and then you really focus in on the positive emotions, you're going to start manifesting those positive, amazing things. And I mean, I wish that we could talk all day because I find this topic so fascinating and so amazing. But I want to give the listeners a chance to learn more. And so I would love to ask you if somebody wants to dive into this a little deeper. I know you have a lot of resources for people and ways that you can get started and ways to help you grow your journaling practice. So if they want to do that, where can they go to read more?
Yeah. Well, I would love if you visited our website. It's IAJW.org, which stands for the International Association for Journal Writing. I'm just going to take a sip of water. And we're a membership community for journal writers worldwide. And I host lots of monthly events. I have a monthly Writing Alone Together circle where I take people to the page with guided themes and prompts, and it's a really rich experience. I host monthly guest interviews with experts in the journaling and writing creativity fields, and they offer all kinds of inspiration and information to keep our journaling practices fresh and really working for us. So becoming a member with us is one invitation. And that's obvious on the site where to find information about that. And I'll share a free gift as well. It's a 20 journal prompts and affirmations to cultivate gratitude in our life. And I'll share that link with Sarah, and you can find it in the show notes with this podcast. And when you sign up to get that free gift, you also receive my weekly journaling newsletter, where I share stories and resources and inspiration to keep supporting you to go to the page in a way that can truly enrich your life and your well-being. So there's
Well,
lots of ways, and I sure hope that people will come by our website. And I'm passionate
yes.
about journaling and passionate to help people create meaningful journaling practices of their own.
Yes, and this is open to all, correct? Not
Yes,
just experienced journalers. Not, I think, it can be intimidating if you feel like you're not a good writer or if you're very new to journaling or if it's something, that you've not done in a really long time. And so these are things that anyone can take part in and get benefits from. Great.
absolutely. We have people who've never journaled before. We have all different ages, genders, all walks of life. It's a very open, kind, caring, compassionate, inspiring community where real connections happen. And whether someone's an introvert and wants to benefit from recordings or really likes to get involved in the community opportunity, it really, you can make it your own. And we don't just teach about how to journal. We really also look at ways to bring journaling into the different areas of our life. So journaling to get unstuck, journaling to when we're grieving, journaling to deal with health, improve our health, journaling for making life decisions. So it's really the application of journaling out into these different areas of life as well. So there's lots of opportunities if there's specific things you want to use your journaling for. I'm just about to launch a Journal of the Month club. And for 12 months, there's a new journal each month. And the first one is on law of attraction. And there's ones on gratitude and abundance and healing through loss and letting go of regrets and worries and, all the things that are part of our human experience. So there's lots of ways to not just how to journal, but really use your journaling to create the changes and also just be in the beauty of the life you're already living.
Thank you so much, Lynda. That sounds absolutely amazing. And I just want to thank you for being here today. And, I think it's just so wonderful to really open our minds to all the different kinds of practices out there that we can take advantage of, to help us heal, to help us be as healthy as possible, and to be as joyful and live our best life. So I love what you do. And I just want to thank you so much for sharing your gifts with us today.
Thank you so much, Sarah, and go well. And I look forward to our next connections, and I know we'll have them. So thank you so
Yes,
much for your podcast and the work you do in the world. And I really appreciate our connection, our new connection.
absolutely. And thank you all for being here and for listening in. I can't wait to see you again. And until next time, I'll see you then.